Welcome to Civic Saturday, Prince George's County. As an extension of Civic University, an organization focused on building a culture of powerful, responsible citizenship across the country, multiple Civic Saturday gatherings are taking place throughout the country. Civic Saturday is basically a civic analog to a faith gathering. It's not about religion in a traditional sense, but about what you might call American civic religion, a creed of ideas and ideals and what it takes to actually live up to and to fulfill the promise of our democracy. Now, I happen to be a person of faith rooted in the Christian tradition and have been deeply influenced by what many refer to as the Black Church. But today's gathering is not focused on a specific faith tradition. Civic Saturdays are arranged in this format because the founders understood that organized religion has figured out a few things about how to bring people together and how to create a language of common purpose, about how to use text to spark people's reckoning with their own shortcomings, weaknesses, and aspirations. Our society is in desperate need of a compelling story that will breathe life into our moral and civic imaginations, and we hope that you will find inspiration in today's gathering. While this gathering is virtual, I happen to live in Prince George's County, Maryland, which serves as a backdrop for how I view community locally, but in many ways can serve as an example for achieving equitable prosperity. Prince George's County is one of the most prosperous and largest majority African American jurisdictions in the country, but it is still plagued by issues rooted in inequality. In our response, it is our desire to come together in a civic community, be inspired and encouraged to reflect and connect and create new civic traditions that are joyful and communal. Today you will hear poetry, readings of civic texts, music, and hear a civic sermon given by me. For those who are interested, there will be an opportunity to join a group discussion via Zoom, and I'll put that link in the chat later in the program. I welcome and encourage you to use the chat throughout our time together as a way to engage with the content and with one another.
I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they maligned so long.
Imagine wherever you go, this love's always surrounding you. Carry you through hurt and pain, but constantly astounding you. Nothing like this I've ever seen. I only hear sweet lullabies whenever you are in my view. I'll play in your fantasy and never wake up feeling blue. I'm just ready to surrender to you. It's all love, strange and rare, far and wide, always there, breathe life on me. It's all love, strange and rare, far and wide, always there, breathe life on me. You can rest assured I've released everything I've ever known. Passion all up in my soul, no worries, 'cause I've been reborn. I want you to breathe, breathe on me. I lost my mind. Feels so good to love this way again. This is the way I am now. I am free. Ooh, letting life breathe on me.
The Darkest Hour by James Baldwin. The darkest hour is just before the dawn, and that I see, which does not guarantee power to draw the next breath, nor abolish the suspicion that the brightest hour we will ever see occurs just before we cease to be.
The uses of the blues does not refer to music. I don't know anything about music. It does not refer to the experience of life or the state of being out of which the blues comes. Now I am claiming a great deal for the blues. I'm using them as metaphor. I might have titled this, for example, the uses of anguish or the uses of pain. But I want to talk about the blues, not only because they speak of this particular experience of life and this state of being, but because they contain the toughness that manages to make this experience articulate. I'm engaged then in a discussion of craft, or to use a very dangerous word, art. I want to suggest that the acceptance of this anguish one finds in the blues and the expression of it creates also, however odd this may sound, a kind of joy. Now, joy is a true state. It is a reality. It has nothing to do with what most people have in the mind when they talk about happiness, which is not a real state and does not really exist. James Baldwin, The Uses of the Blues. Our text today is found in James Baldwin's essay, The Uses of the Blues, written in 1964. I recommend that you read the entire essay when you have the opportunity. It can be found in The Cross of Redemption, Uncollected Writings. In his New York Times bestseller, Begin Again, James Baldwin's America and its Urgent Lessons for Our Own, author and professor Eddie Glaude states, Baldwin is like a blues singer who sings about the crossroads. He stands at the railroad junction where he can go in multiple directions. He is betwixt and between possibilities. Citizen University's co-founder and CEO Eric Liu put together a collection of civic sermons into a book entitled Become America. In the preface, Eric asks us a series of questions. Can we deliver the country we've been promising ourselves all our lives? Can we face our history and truly animate words like equal justice under the law and e pluribus unum, out of many one? Can we at long last become America? Perhaps appropriate, we are here today in the final days of Black History Month to ask, can we? Like Baldwin, America is betwixt and between possibilities. We are at a crossroads, standing at a railroad junction with the ability to go in multiple directions. In fact, America has and is always becoming. The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. stated, to become instruments of a great idea is a privilege that history gives only occasionally. And I believe this current moment might just be one of those occasions. But what does this have to do with the blues? I read somewhere that the blues is that peculiar feeling that makes you know that there is something seriously wrong with society, even if you may not possess the intellect or political power to do anything about it. I suspect that many of us are just flat out exhausted and are in desperate need of moments of clarity. We all could benefit from moments that center us and provide us with equilibrium. We need moments that carry possibilities that awaken our imagination. And as we consider this present moment, and beyond. In the fall of 2019, I had the good fortune of joining the Harwood Institute, led by Richard Harwood, as a studio on community associate. After many years of serving organizations as a professional fundraiser, I made a leap in transition out of the field. As a result, I went on a personal and professional journey to explore some deeper moral questions with an eye towards shifting the status quo. My experience with Harwood Institute provided me the time and the space so desperately needed to wrestle with some ideas of my own. The Harwood Institute is fueled by the concept civic faith and identified parallels with the philosophical tradition of American pragmatism. Civic faith is a philosophy that places people, community, and shared responsibility at the center of our shared lives in an effort to create a more hopeful society. Building on my interest in the writings of Black thinkers Cornel West and Eddie Glaude, we begun to have a conversation on how we could engage American pragmatism through the lens of African American thinkers that have explicitly and implicitly employed pragmatism to contribute to the lives of everyday people. As Glaude asserts, American pragmatism is a direct reflection of the unique character of America itself, which is inextricably linked to the presence of its darker citizens, America's blues people. Today's reflection is an extension of that project, and in the same way Glaude stated that pragmatism must be made to sing the blues, America must sing the blues. This is an American blues. A blues sensibility. The blues is a cultural legacy that dares to see the American landscape from the viewpoint of the underside, the Reverend Dr. Otis Moss III. As I mentioned earlier, I'm not a stranger to the thought of Dr. Cornel West. At one point in my career, I worked at Princeton University during the same time that he and Dr. Glaude served on the faculty there, and I had a chance to sit in on their classes from time to time. Dr. West is fond of telling a particular story of Socrates. He goes on to say, what's fascinating about Socrates, and of course, this is a question that scholars have wrestled with for so many years, why is it that Socrates never cries? He never sheds a tear. In all the depictions of Socrates, we see Socrates arguing, interrogating, questioning, but never cries. West goes on, but why is that important in terms of democratic practice? He responds by saying, because given the centrality of the Socratic question, anyone who has never cried or shed a tear has never really loved. And if you've never really loved, I would argue that you've never fully lived. Bluesman B.B. King said it this way, nobody loves me but my mama, and she might be jiving too. When was the last time you cried? Not for yourself, but for the fact, as Dr. King stated, that America has defaulted on its promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring the sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. That term has shifted from Negro to Black, but we're still here. And as we do inventory, sure, advances have been made for some of us in where we live, where we work, how much we earn, where we attend school, all those things that we hold high in American society. But on some of the most significant issues, I'm concerned that we still are in possession of a rubber check. And as much as this Civic Saturday is centered on Prince George's County, Maryland, we need to say a word about the county. It's one of the most prosperous and largest majority Black counties in the country. However, as with many communities across America, racism still persists, and the remnants of slavery, segregation, and systemic racism continue to plague its residents. And COVID-19 and civil unrest have only exposed and exacerbated the gaps that many were already aware of. For many, talking about the country in this way is extremely difficult. In fact, many seek to avoid it. But as the literary giant Ralph Ellison stated, the blues is an impulse to keep the painful details and episodes of a brutal experience alive. We cannot hide from it. We need to develop a blues sensibility that requires us to go beyond the symbolic. Beyond the symbolic. This is who we are. Symbols matter. We use them in telling stories of our past and who we are, and we choose them carefully. These words were from Mitchell Andrew, the former mayor of New Orleans. On January 6, 2021, a riot and violent attack arose against the United States Congress at the U.S. Capitol. Many made the statement, "This is not us." I have to disagree. This is us, and we have to come to terms with how we got here. I spoke earlier about my experience at the Harwood Institute, and while I was there, I wrote a reflective essay as a result. Here's an excerpt from that essay. This moment is calling for unlikely approaches, and society needs leaders that will offer new approaches and perspectives. While many want to jump into action, this is a cry for us to reflect on who we have been, who we are now, and who we can become. This simply cannot be a call for patriotism often grounded in a nostalgic remembrance of a past that never existed and forward to the future no matter how much of a challenge it presents. In the same way that I have attempted to exhibit a level of transparency throughout this piece, we have to embrace the discomfort that true patriotism requires and be willing to contend with difficult questions. An example of this would be to ask, how do African Americans hold in tension the legacy of systemic racism and still have pride in this country? This is when hope and faith are truly exercised. In doing so, we must move beyond performative patriotism. There is a clear debate happening about what it means to be patriotic. Rich Harwood took on this issue and put forth this definition. He writes, the word patriotism means to hold a love and devotion for one's country. We believe that such devotion is at the root of improved political conduct. To be truly devoted to something means that you hold such pride in it, that you work to improve it, even when you no longer like what it is or what it has become. Patriotism flows from a sense of love of nation so deep that one is willing to search for what is good and right, especially when the path is hard. Our approach is not to simply reform this country, but completely change it. And this is in the face of some who want to make America great again and return the nation to some of its darkest moments. And I don't believe for a second that because we've had a transfer of power in government, that the hard work is behind us. In many ways, the hard work has only begun. Some may believe that there is no reason to have the blues. But if you really love America, and if you really believe in the promise of America, you ought to feel something. Baldwin writes, Ray Charles, a great tragic artist, makes a genuinely religious confession, something triumphant and liberating. He tells us that he cried so loud he gave the blues to his next door neighbor. Let me warn you that you won't convince everybody, and it may take some time to convince somebody, but keep singing the blues. In Glaude's Begin Again, he writes about a handwritten note that sits in the archive of the Schomburg Center of Research and Black Culture. It reads, whatever may have blocked your understanding of what we have tried to tell you of our suffering is dissolved by suffering, and we beg of you to allow us to share your grief. As we know that in these trying days to come, you share struggle, for our struggle is the same. This was a letter to Robert Kennedy, following a meeting between the two of them when it seemed like the two of them would not see eye to eye. In fact, Robert Kennedy developed a deep suspicion of Baldwin because of his persistence in speaking the truth. Glaude writes, Baldwin wanted Kennedy to see that what was at the root of all our troubles, that for the most part human beings refuse to live honestly with themselves and were all too willing to hide behind the idols of race and ready to kill in order to defend them. We must move beyond the symbols and tear the false idols down. It is only when we reckon with the lies that we find real joy. From reckoning to real joy. And I want to suggest that the acceptance of this anguish one finds in the blues and the expression of it creates also, however odd this may sound, a kind of joy. James Baldwin. This is the hardest point to explain and perhaps one that I am still seeking to grasp myself. But bluesman Buddy Guy said it this way, funny thing about the blues, you play them because you got them, but when you play them, you lose them. There is a part of me that can't tell you how it happens, but guarantee you that it does. In recent years, the ideas of black joy as a movement and a form of rebellion has been taking root. And it is an active resistance against oppression, which at its core is an effort to keep other people down. I suspect people do this because they have not fully come to terms with their own humanity, and they gain a false sense of themselves in the degradation of another. We have created a nation that is predicated on winners and losers, and to make it even worse, it's a rigged contest. During my years as a fundraiser, nothing was worse than trying to make a connection with a man who was born on third base and was convinced that he hit a home run and believed everyone else was beneath him. Baldwin warned us, people who don't know who they are privately, except as we have accepted, the fantastic desire which we call American politics, and which we call American foreign policy, and the incoherence of the one is an exact reflection of the incoherence of the other. Now, the only way to change all this is to begin to ask ourselves very difficult questions. As we close out Black History Month, may I suggest that we celebrate Black joy as a form of resistance? Not conjure joy, but joy that Baldwin says a true state, a reality which has nothing to do with what most people have in mind when they talk about happiness, which is not a real state and does not really exist. It is the joy that comes through a blue sensibility that has wrestled with the worst of us, but still has hope and faith in the best of us. It is a joy that doesn't worship at the altar of any claim of supremacy, but tears down every false idol. A joy that takes nothing but an idea and turns it into a masterpiece. Perhaps it is in this blues-drenched joy that we will become America and American blues.
If you've been blessed to see the day, won't you stand with me? Let your heart be full, 'cause you've seen another day. Let this dream take you to where your heart is. So let's love well, treat everybody right. We are one. In this life, we are stronger together, better than ever. Yeah, yeah. Let your heart be glad, 'cause you've seen another day. Won't you stand with me? We are part of a plan that is bigger than we can see. Won't you stand with me? So let's love well, treat everybody right. We are one. In this life, we are stronger together, better than ever. Yeah, yeah. So let's love well, treat everybody right. We are one. In this life, we are stronger together, better than ever. Yeah, yeah.
We hope that you are both inspired and challenged by this portion of today's gathering. For those who want to engage in a group discussion, please meet us over at Zoom, and you'll find that link in the chat. Before you go, I would like to say thank you to a few people who made today possible. My wife Natasha and sons Solomon and Samuel. Real Genius Media, a media company based right here in Prince George's County, led by Gene Setzer, along with his wife Jamaica Jones Setzer. Tamara Wellens, a singer-songwriter and producer also here in Prince George's County, who provided our music for today. The Greater Washington Community Foundation, who provided fiscal support through the Community Awards. Civic University. The Harwood Institute. My colleagues at the Prince George's County Social Innovation Fund, and you for joining us today. We appreciate your presence. Thank you.